In 1912, France built these 14-inch guns to go on battleships. With the First World War starting in 1914 and the front line fixed to the east of France, there was not much call for battleships. The 14-inch guns were installed on curved rails which would allow them to be aimed. They could send 450 kilogram shells 35 kilometres, that's 21 miles. After the war they were sent to military camps east of Paris. In 1933 one was brought here to the Quiberon peninsula for testing new shells. They wanted to increase the range to 27 miles. In 1940 the north of France was occupied, including Britanny. The Germans built the first of 5 submarine bases at Lorient in Britanny. As part of the protection of the base, the Germans used a 14-inch gun already in place and 3 others to make a battery at Bego near Plouhamel. They took advantage of the railway that had been built in the 19th century to Quiberon and added spurs to get the guns to their positions. The guns were in positions at the end of the rails. The guns were on 2 bogies. The front one was dismantled and put in a bunker. The rear one was turned 90 degrees and used to turn the gun. When they tested the guns, they found that the shock wave could damage anything nearby, so they made a sloping bank around each gun to send the shock wave upwards. The battery was well defended by flak positions. There were 14 flak guns and a flak machine gun. There were also many bunkers for the soldiers. The fire control position was a tower 60 foot high. A rangefinder was on the top floor of 7. Below that was a goniometer, and below that was a lookout slit. The battery commander and his deputy had rooms in the tower. Air would be sucked in the pumps on the ground floor, filtered, then distributed to each floor. There was a ventilation system and the outlet was on the top floor. On the second floor was an opening to fire through for close protection. The rangefinder would be used to get the range to the target. The range and direction would have to be converted for each gun before being communicated to the guns. The goniometer was a device for measuring angles. Once the guns had fired, the angle between the target and the impact would be measured to help correcting the aim. The shells were brought from these bunkers near the railway to the guns on narrow gauge lines. 2 of the bunkers have been turned into museums, one on the Chouannerie, the counter-revolution movement after the French Revolution, and the other about the World War II battery. Lorient is visible in the distance. The submarine pens at Lorient were the first of 5 bases built in France. In June 1940, Admiral Donitz decided to build the U-boat base at Lorient. 3 giant bunkers were built successively, called KIII, KIII and KIII. The site covered 65 acres. Sand was quarried locally and the metal came from Germany. 1 million cubic metres of concrete were used to build the base. Compare that with 300,000 cubic metres of concrete used to build all the bunkers of Normandy. Construction involved 15,000 workers. Half were slave labour from Eastern Europe or Africa. They were housed in camps. The other half were French workers employed by construction companies. German naval officers would be housed in chateaux and hotels. The first construction were these dome bunkers. They were for sheltering U-boats out of the water. The U-boat would be pulled up the slipway to the turntable and then slid into one or other of the bunkers. Next, Block K1 was built and K2. The U-boat would enter this covered pen, then be pulled up to a slipway onto a platform on rails. The U-boat would then be slid sideways to line up with one of the dry pens and then slid into it. The base still didn't have enough capacity, so K3 was built. K3 had pens where 2 U-boats could be housed. Lock gates could be closed to dry out the pen. Many anti-aircraft guns were around and artillery to protect the base. It was bombed several times. A 4th bunker, K4, was started, but this wall is all that was built. That extension to K1 is part of the planned K4. Here are some torpedoes and a mine on display. 140 U-boats came into the base. After the war, the French Navy used the base to shelter and repair submarines. There was 1,800 Navy and civilian staff. One of the submarines using the base was Flore, which is on display here. Flore came into service in 1964. It was attached to the base of Toulon, but would come to Lorient for maintenance and repairs. In 1994 it was retired and has been here since 1995. In 1997 the French naval base was discontinued. 80 years has taken the toll on the concrete. It was starting to deteriorate, so many of the bays have been taken over by industries.